A weekly session of Practical Awakening with Di and Anjali. Today, spiritual approach to all life situations. Hello, Anjali. How are you?
Hi, hi, Di. I'm doing well. I just want to remind our viewers as they're watching this, if they like the content, please hit the thumbs up. It helps us. And if you're interested in making a donation, either at the end or during, there's a link down below for that. And we appreciate that. It supports this channel. Back to you, Di.
Thank you. Starting as usual, let's get warmed up a little bit and go a little bit deeper. So, we're going with the breath and the mantra. Space. With no divisions. We're all is one and limitless. We are all sharing this space. Spiritual, spiritual. What does it mean? Spiritual, spiritual approach to all life situations. Here we are. Now, Anjali, shall we try and clarify this a bit?
That would be
What
helpful.
does it mean? What does it mean to you? Spiritual approach to all life situations. Can you make anything of it?
I had a bit of an insight this morning, and I've thought of this before, but it makes more sense. It was at a richer level that it came to me, and it was as soon as I make a distinction in my life between good and bad, I've it's a mental processing, which I've known that, um, but it was at such a rich level that if I can just be with what is, observing, hearing, whatever the intake of that is, sensing, feeling, touching, tasting, whatever that intake is, if I can just be with what is without any hint of a preference, that feels like that for me feels like the spiritual, the base of the spiritual.
Yeah, rich. I would even say, Angie, if you can be what is,
Correct. I haven't gotten
you
there.
know, not with, no, no, but, full on. Once we are
Mm,
full on, we are what is and not with what is. And that's the difference. But
mm,
as you say, there is no reference. You know, when I was thinking about this title, spiritual approach to all life situations, I was being very simple, and I was thinking as life is non-physical,
mm,
existence is non-physical, and life is experience of existence, so it's non-physical. And if we can think about life in that way, as non-physical, as the continuation of existence through life cycles, cycle after cycle after cycle, everything changes in a way because of a different approach. Like if my approach is, you know, existence is continuous and life in existence doesn't start or stop with the, birth or death and stuff like that, but it
mm,
goes on, continues, goes on through life cycles. And although most of us forget completely the previous life cycles, it is possible to remember at least bits and pieces. And it is also possible, Angie, to find traces of previous life or lives in this life. Now, I will ask
How?
you one question. This is a personal question
Mm,
for you, Angie. Like, viewers who've been following us for a while know a bit about you, how you started your spiritual journey, or whatever we call it, very early in
mm,
life with your Baba, with your teacher, with your master, and how you had this very, very unusual reaction to it when you were crying and you felt really drawn in and stuff like that from the start. Now I ask you, Angie, why do you reckon that is?
Part of me, since I met you, has set that aside because the why questions I'm not answering anymore. But you're asking me now, so I don't know. I could say that it's simply, I don't know, recognition of him on a deep level, which I'm not aware of. It could be, someone has posed the possibility of it just being sort of like layers of pain body releasing itself in the presence of someone who has, you know, kind of takes your defenses down. I don't know. I mean, it seems to me not very productive on some level for
No,
me to like, it's all up here, in other words. I mean,
yeah. So I will make it very simple, Angie. I will make it very simple. I will say this is because in your previous life, you were very close and you were very much into the spiritual sort of environment.
mm,
And I will say one more thing, I always had this absolute obsession in a way with the boat. Me having this little tiny wooden boat with the motor at the back, onboard
oh,
motor,
yeah.
and going down the stream or whichever way, up or down the stream, nice and quiet. And I, f- I think it was always like a river or something like that. I haven't seen the pictures, but just I always, all my life, had this obsession. And wherever
Mm,
I was, whatever financial situation I was in, I was always trying to find ways to buy this boat and this and that. And then I saw one of my previous lives, just a little bit of bits and pieces where I was actually, on that boat as a fisherman and having this, spending my lifetime on a boat like that.
mm,
And I realized that my obsession with boats is not actually having this actual boat wherever I am, in whichever environment, that actually do not coincide. The environment I mean does not coincide at all with the nice, easy flow of a river and being nice and warm and all that, which I always experience in connection with the boat, but it's just very different, Where I am, it's
mm.
choppy seas, it's cold, it's windy, it's. But I realized anyway at that point that this my life obsession with the boat was actually not nothing with the nothing from this life, at all. And I realized some other things too. Like I always from an early age had this and I always loved kneeling on the ground and stuff like that. I always loved being on the ground. I've seen some other glimpses, from previous lives, which actually confirm why is that so. Because I was
Hmm.
born in a completely different environment. None of my, whoever, everyone was always surprised. I could never even sit properly on a chair. I never learned to sit properly on a chair. I always
Mm.
struggled with it. All this time, I answer with a very simple thing, which is just that they are traces from previous life or previous lives. Because
That makes
life
sense.
is an experience of existence, is a continuation. I also said to you many times, you lived for the last year this sort of a very monastic sort of a lifestyle that you were very, very fine with. And not many
Mm.
people in this normal environment can actually manage to live like that. But to you, it was not, it was quite natural. It was quite, a nice way to live a life. That's a trace, Angie, from a previous lifetime, too.
So how does this, I mean, and for other viewers out there, how does this help me? We're talking about
You
spiritual,
just,
like, I
it
mean,
is,
does
it's,
that
I think it's immensely helpful. You don't think so?
I do. I'm sort of, it's a curiosity question for me, but does it, I'm just trying to kind of feel what that feels like. I guess there's more self acceptance when you were telling me about this. I mean, Baba also said the same thing that you said. We had been together the last previous time was close, but he wouldn't tell me the relationship. So it was interesting. It feels in some ways like a curiosity thing, which just becomes like a head game for me. But the other thing that I'm just feeling now is just more of a self acceptance with who I am. Um,
And what
because
is?
I,
And what is?
correct. Yeah. Um, and I'm wondering if
Existence,
that's
a continuation of existence through different lifetimes, life cycles.
so. Is that the clarity that you have talked about in some other videos that you have after awakening? You said there's this clarity and this understanding which follows that clarity, then of seeing the bigger picture and how all this fits together rather than just a small little slice of what I see right now as my life in this body.
Yeah, you can absolutely call it that way, Angie. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You see, I always struggled with this from an early age, this explanation of life. Why are we born if we die at any moment, at any time, if it's all together for nothing, if we put all this effort
Mm.
to maybe live for a few days, and you maybe live for a few years. A lot of people die young as kids, as it doesn't matter when you die, but what
Right.
is the point of this whole thing? How can it be that something as life could be so completely senseless? It just makes no sense whatsoever. And I decided very early in life, I said, I'm not going to do anything. What for? When I got to the stage when I needed to, I don't know, started to have a good job, do this, I said, what for? Be
Mm.
this or be that. I said, what for? I just could not fathom it whatsoever. Why people strive so much for what? It makes no sense. And then you die, and I always say, okay, you die, and then what? And then they said, oh, I don't know. Well, I said, how can you not know? Isn't that important?
That's right.
They say, no, I mean, we just don't know. So we live a life that we don't understand, that we don't know what happens before, we don't know what happens after, we don't know, is there a heaven or hell, or it just sounds to be like a fairy tale, or is it like a complete nothingness, which is again completely, what's the point of it all then anyway? It didn't make any sense at all. So the explanations were given of the lack of them because people just say don't know, and then they're being smart and they say, "Oh, we don't know because no one's come back to tell us." Ha ha ha, you know. And this is it. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is it. This is it. So isn't it, Angie, much more helpful even before you become awake at, at any degree? Isn't it much more helpful to embrace this continuation of existence?
It feels like there's more of a sense of ease for me. Yes. Um, but part of it feels like I still don't know where I am in the continuum of things. I still, it's a mental game for me still, I guess. I feel like I want to use this life well, but if I see it as a whole continuum, maybe that's not important anymore. It doesn't matter where I end up in this body, in this life, because I'll continue.
Yeah. But then you do want to go with the stream. You don't want to go against the stream. You don't want to struggle. You don't want to make it a
Right.
continuous struggle. You want to make it something that's as much at ease and comfortable. You know what I mean? At ease, at peace, as much as possible.
So you said at one point that there's no, I think if I remember correctly, you said in one of your videos there's no meaning to life. Is that what you're saying here?
You know, the meaning is not in achievements. The meaning is not in showing what you've, whatever, what
Mm,
positions you've got to, what material, whatever you've got to. The meaning is not in that. The meaning is in going with the stream at ease, at peace, and spreading that peace. That is such a
mm,
ease of existence. And if you strive for anything in life, you strive for that peace. You strive for that ease of living,
yes.
regardless of what's and the things on the surface in a physical on a physical level follow the ease. When you can go through with the ease and peace, the physical level adjusts to that. People always think that it starts on the outside and then goes in, but it's actually the other way around. It starts in and then manifests on the outside. I know these are just the words, but I just want to say that once you find the peace and the ease on the inside, the outside experiences will follow.
Mm. But I won't care at that point if they come or if they don't come on the external, because the internal will be
They will
so
come.
complete.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But while you're still in a body, it doesn't hurt.
Mm,
While you're still in the body, you're obviously influenced in a way. Of course, as you say, Angie, once you're awake, you're not. But before you're awake, while you're still in the
mm,
body, you're sort of influenced very much by the outside circumstances. But once you're awake, the outside circumstances follow the inside peace and the ease. And it's in sync.
mm,
But I'm just going to be a little bit more pragmatic now and say this, like when people get into difficult life situations or they struggle with life maybe continuously, and then they always look for these reasons in this life and say, oh, my childhood, my this, my dad, that,
mm,
I didn't mean that, but that, whatever things were wrong, the wrong things were done to me. I was abused, I was this, I was that, I was neglected, I don't know, I grew up in circumstances that weren't favorable, and so on and so on and so on. I would cut that all off. I would cut it
mm.
all off.
How do you mean?
Just like that, you see, as this existence is a continuation of life cycles, there are traces and there are effects of previous life cycles, as I say, on a current life cycle, which we call karma in a way.
Mm,
So I would absolutely just accept it like that. It is not because this environment or that environment or this person or that person, or it is all part of karma. It is all part of, the flow of life cycles, one after one, after another, after another. That's where the acceptance, we had this special weekly practice, practical, whatever, awakening about acceptance. Acceptance
mm,
can come in when you accept the continuation of existence through different life cycles and effects of previous life cycles being felt in a current life cycle. So all this psychology and then going back, and I don't know, people mentally then go and do all sorts of things and, struggle. It cannot be resolved on a mental level, Angie. All these, psychotherapies and psychiatrists and
Mm.
all that. I mean, it's often very unsuccessful. A lot of these conditions are always very hard to get out of or, resolve on a mental level. I would say impossible. But if you can see the life is part of existence, is a life cycle, one of life cycles, and how it all flows one after another, how it all influences one another, how it's not just one lifetime is not just a start and the end, but it's a continuation from before and then going on. Whether you go into another life cycle or whether you don't go into a life cycle anymore because you completely understand
Mm.
the nature of existence. But it opens up life on so many different levels when you can, if you can understand it like that. I find it, I actually understood it in a way like that and accepted it even before I actually lost my eye, even before I stopped, before there was no attachment, before the so called awakening or the start of awakening. I was able to
Mm.
completely accept this continuation of existence. To me, it just was just completely right, completely compared to the explanations we were given before. It just made so much more sense, even on a level of everyday life.
Do you have a practical example for viewers, like what that means? So I was sitting here thinking, okay, if I practically accept, and I have, because from an early age, Baba told me I have many lives and yada yada. But it, I don't know, maybe all of our viewers are already there. It feels like what it does for me is it opens up self acceptance in this body, in now.
Completely, completely. You see, Angie, you're always, now a bit less, but you were always, since I got to know you, which is not that long, but anyway, I got to know you on a very deep level in a way. You were always very self critical, okay?
Mm.
So I did this, I did that, I could do things better. I was, fed all these things from the environment and I accepted all this and, I went for all the things that I shouldn't have and blah, 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 blah. You see, all this falls off, Angie. It's a continuation of life
Mm.
cycles. Everything that was accumulated before and then it's sort of, leaves traces into the next life cycle and next life cycle that are completely influenced by the previous ones. All this self criticism, all these sort of regrets, all these sort of disappointments, all this sort of can be just so simply written off by saying, look, there is a continuation of life cycles. There is a so called karma, which means that one life cycle can influence and does influence the next one and the next one and so on. We should just stop this guilt game. Stop going back, trying to work out what could have been different, how we need to change, how this, how that, how whatever, how this person did me wrong, or how I don't know. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It opens up everything on a completely different level. I will give my own example, which is a very good example in a way because it was very extreme. So up to the age of probably 50, or even a bit more, I laid so much blame for everything I was and the way I was on my mom specifically. Specifically. My
Mm.
childhood and everything it went and the way and blah 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 blah. And then, of course, there was a lot of self. I could have done many things differently and all that, but it all started there for me, like, and there was a lot of this, horrible emotional states where there was this almost hatred or just some sort of complete repulsion or sort of, and then I could feel like that, I was just continuing with this same sort of relationship cycle that I had with my mom later on in my life, the way I was looking for partners, the way I surrounding myself with people that were just really mentally damaged or like my mom was and so on and so on. It was
Mm.
horrible,
Mm.
absolutely horrible. And I also had this complete overwhelm that nothing is ever going to change, that I'm always going to
Mm.
stay in. And I apologized. My mom is dead now, been a few years, and I apologized to her many times, even after her death, after such a horrible, horrible nonsense, that damages
Mm.
so many lives. It damaged me in so many ways. Of course, it damaged my mom too, because I often quite explicitly expressed all this. I was always I was never short of, direct expression,
Mm.
and so on and so on and so on. And, this black and white sort of looking at things. We always sort of look at things black and white if we don't accept life as a continuation, like these bad people who do this and that, and then these good white people who sort of do all these good deeds and just suffer from the bad black people. And, so
Mm.
much crap, completely honestly, so much crap. So-called black people suffer and so-called white people suffer. People who
Mm.
obviously had have more good karma, which means that the previous lifetimes were sort of, accumulated less bad karma, obviously suffer less. But this black and white and this sort of villains and whatever victims, or I mean, it's just so much crap. It is just so
Mm.
misleading. It is just so really just causes such a stir and emotional sort of, people buy this wholeheartedly, and then all their life, are stuck in this, in this emotional sort of a roller coaster of, good and bad, as you said before, good and bad, and acceptable, not acceptable, should be, shouldn't be like this, shouldn't be like this, shouldn't be like this. My God, of course it should be like this. It's the only way it is, but you know what I mean?
I do.
People bring up so much with this approach, so much struggle, so much emotional turmoil, and they're not doing any good to anyone, not themselves, not anyone else, not it's just it's a misunderstanding of existence and of life.
It is. I have to say, from my personal perspective here, my victimhood is, I volunteered for that. I mean, in other words, I was attached to my story greatly. I was attached to being right. I was attached to all of this kind of the I-ness of it all, the reference
Mm,
point of it all. Um, and right now, I have a job at a assisted living, low income assisted living facility, and it's been interesting for me because they all want to engage with me. Of course, it feels like they want me to recognize their I, and they want to be significant somehow enough to do that, but they are extraordinarily attached to their story. So when they tell it, it's loaded with emotional charge, it's loaded with I've been wronged, it's loaded with victimhood. Um, and it's interesting for me to see that because I see remnants of that in myself, not as strong, but there's definitely, I think anyone who has a reference, an I as a reference point, has that same perspective. It's just so stark with them that I can see it. People of my socioeconomic level it's a little bit harder because they're more similar to me, and it's harder for me to see my own crap, so to speak. Um,
Can I just say something, Angie, on that? Can you
yeah.
see how they are caught completely in this story,
Yes.
completely caught inside it, which which renders them helpless. That
Mhm.
makes them helpless. This being caught completely inside that victimhood, whatever you call it, that makes them helpless.
So how do you help them out of that?
They have to detach, Angie. It's all in detachment, you know. You know me. You know my preaching story, whatever it is. You know my
I got
whatever it
that,
is. It's always that. It's always
but
that.
I found myself sitting there, like, I have a desk job, it's a reception job, so I'm sitting there in the midst of all of these people because they all wanna talk to me and tell their story. How
Yes.
how do I even help them? I see that they are they're drowning in their story.
You can't Angie help them, but you can try and find as much space as you can. You know what I mean by space
Hmm.
while you're there. That helps.
It seems to attract them more to me.
Absolutely, Angie. Your space is so much more calm and comforting. It's like they all want a part of that space, you know, Angie.
Is that enough? I feel like I'm not. I mean, they've had like COVID running through the building. They have bed bug infestations. I can relate to like what that would feel like, with bed bugs. A woman, she doesn't want to go to bed at night. She's overly anxious. She's hyperventilating, you know, pupils contracted. She's
She's
just like, she's a hot mess.
yeah. She's completely attached to these thoughts, Angie. Completely glued onto them. Completely sucked into them, you know.
So just
You
offering
can't
her my
help these people,
space.
Angie, but you just being there, opening the space, settling inside you the space, and then opening it as much as you can. Just that's helpful. Of
Mm,
course, if they can, Angie, if they can do the follow the breath and the mantra, that'd be tremendously helpful if they could practice that. But how many of these people, would be even open to practice that?
mm,
Probably not many. That's what I
none.
mean, They
Yeah.
always, you see, this is part of victimhood, Angie, which you very rightly identified before. It's always being right. You see, a victim is always right. They
Mm,
develop this righthood at the same time. As long as we're victims and we have been done wrong by other people and we're always right now, we have this somehow, we have managed to get onto this ground where we are always right because we were victims, okay?
mm.
We're always right. Our attitude and our this and our that and this black and white thing and not being able to get out of it, but we're always right. It's very hard to show a person like that a better way, or to say, look, if you could just do this, close your eyes and just find the breath and just do it for a few minutes here and there, or a minute or half a minute, and then try and do it again, it would help. But how many of these people are actually even open to some tiny suggestion?
Yeah, none.
They're completely locked in this story, completely in their victimhood, in their righthood at the same time.
Yes. I was not implying too that it's only lower socioeconomic level. It's just my work environment that puts me into the housing because I see
Of
that
course.
also happening with very rich people attached to the story and the victimhood
Yeah,
and the
of course. Of course. It's just in the environment where you're in, Angie, now it's so very, very obvious because all these people have accumulated there because of the
mm,
circumstances. But it's a very good learning ground for you in a way, if I can say that.
mm,
So you can see really well how this complete attachment to the thoughts, to the eye, to your story, to how completely renders you helpless. You're not
It
open to
does.
anything. You're not even open to help yourself. You're not even open when someone actually offers you maybe something that will help you. Nah, you're always staying this victim, locked up in this story.
But I want to help them. There's so much suffering, needless
There
suffering.
is actually lots of suffering in this world. Lots and lots and lots and lots. And lots of it is even not as obvious as this.
Mm.
There is lots of suffering. The best way to help Angie is to become spiritually awake as much as you can in this lifetime. And while you're there, just try and establish yourself in a space and just sit with them.
Mm.
I've got a person like that at work that is just like that, complete victim, complete right, victimhood plus righthood, always right and a victim all her life.
Mm.
And she's already in her 50s and just goes on and on and on relentlessly about her story of victimhood. Whether it's people who work there, whether it's the customers, like we are in a shop, obviously we got people. Everyone who comes in a shop gets told a little bit of this victimhood story and so
Mm.
on and so on. You know, to me, obviously, it doesn't really bother me much, but sometimes I just sit with her when she's at the back where I am, and we manage to have a few quiet moments, and I think those ones are the best. When I sit with her and she manages to be a little bit quiet next to me, and she does actually, and I can feel her existence, not just this life cycle, but she has so much potential, Angie, believe me, so much potential as we all have. But
Mm.
if she could just, I never mentioned anything about the breeding or mentor or anything because she just can't accept anything apart from her, righthood and victimhood. But maybe one day, if we manage to sit a bit, because we work together quite a lot, if we manage to sit a bit longer term, maybe with time she'll be able to maybe even accept something from me. But who knows?
So, how can viewers watching the viewers like myself, that don't have ready access to past life information or other things, how do they proceed? Like here now in this body?
I think there is nothing wrong, Angie, with buying into it. As human beings, we buy into so much crap, okay, that we are being given from the birth on, as
Mhm.
explanations of what is what and what. So why not buy into this?
And what does that look like? What do you mean buying in? Like, mm.
More life cycles if I obviously don't and a lot of things that happen now, most of the things are influenced by the previous life cycle. So it's not exactly what I did or didn't do or stuff like that. So I'll write all that off. I won't go into that. What I will do is I will try and make this life as much at ease and at peace as possible by doing the steps, of breathing, follow the breath and the mantra, and go with the stream, as much as I can inside the space, as much as I can. Stop self blame, stop regrets, stop, pointing the finger at other people.
Mm.
And recognizing even, I managed to recognize some things, as not from this life, even before I actually seen the glimpses, like as not being able to sit on a chair or kneeling very often from my childhood on, which is
Mm,
very unusual. I was from a completely atheist. I've never seen a person kneel in my life. You know what I mean? Like I was never
mm,
even, we never went to church or anything like that. Always, even sitting on the ground, always and stuff like that. And the obsession with the boat and the water. Look, I managed to recognize some things that obviously not have not come from my immediate environment or people around me or even people before them, generations back. So you say to yourself, okay, there are things in life that are, remnants or whatever traces of the previous lifetimes. Like you can recognize quite a few, aren't you? No problem there.
right. Absolutely. The mandalas also were significant all the way through this one, and I'm
Absolutely.
sure in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is resonance. How do you say that? Resonance with that, aren't
Right.
you? There is a deep resonance with that. If people can
Mhm.
just acknowledge it and accept it as that, it resonates. And it opens up the whole thing, Angie. And you're also straight away a little bit less caught inside this one body because there were other bodies, Angie, before. And there will be other bodies later on if you stay inside the life cycles. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I always had this thing. I have to say this way before enlightenment, and people laughed at me. I didn't say it to many people, but those I did. And I mentioned that before. Whenever I saw this image in the mirror, I always say, "It's not important. This is not me. I mean, this is something that comes and goes." And I always knew that. I couldn't explain it. Okay, I wasn't, but I always knew that. And I said to you, and I had a very very good friend for many years who was so hooked up on his image. And I always say to him, "Look, you're not looking at yourself. Don't worry about it. It's not important." He obviously laughed his head off. He said, "You're crazy." But
mm,
I always knew that. Just knew. I couldn't explain it in any way, but I always knew that. It always resonated with me. That's why even when you see me now, I'm not a person who does a bit to improve her looks or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like I always loved being just the way it is, just the way it is.
mm.
It's fine. It's just fine. I obviously take it to be clean and tidy and all that. That's part of being in sync with everything. But apart from that, like it really is, it's not important at all.
It's not.
And you see people get in bad circumstances, and you know how they say, sometimes I have this when I talk about karma, and I have people putting these things in the comments like, "Oh, bad things happen to good people," and stuff like that. And yes,
Mm,
because you say you have to see the continuation of life cycles. If you were in the life cycles before we created bad karma, which is going against the stream, causing the disruption, like causing hurt to yourself and other people and stuff like that. This is just energy disruption, you know what I mean? Waves. Anyway, that obviously spreads, Angie, through consecutive lifetimes. And in this
mm,
lifetime, we can have effects of this. But, there are people who, for example, I know a lady who lost her husband, then her lost her one son, then another son, then she lost another husband. She survived through all this. But there was just a
mm,
blow after blow after blow after blow. And she was never a bad person. She was always a very open, generous, you know what I mean?
mm,
So it's definitely And it has not come from this lifetime, okay? Definitely not. Definitely not. Because she used to, oh my God, what did I do wrong? I mean, what has Angie, it was in previous lifetimes. There is nothing you can do about it, okay? Nothing.
So it just is coming back to the breath, though. I mean, I just hear you talking, and it feels like I could. It just feels so simple. I mean, it doesn't. In some ways, for me, it doesn't matter where my samskaras or my karma. To it doesn't help. I guess it helps me in some way to see it, but on one level, I'm getting down to the simplest, like rock bottom level for myself that you've taught me, and it's just about breathing and mantra. And so, like, these
Angie,
bad
it
things that
opens
happen
everything
or the
up.
good things or it I don't know. If if I don't ask the why question, like I have a disaster that happens, for instance, financial disaster, if I don't ask a why question about why did this happen to me or where did this come from or I feel like all of that for me starts to make a story that I'm not really sure about. I'm just speculating. And I remember you told me early on, one of the first times I talked with you, you're like, just stop it. Stop it. It's just speculation. I mean, it's just who knows?
Absolutely.
And until I
Absolutely.
know, then that will be different. But right now, at the space I'm in, it feels like the most helpful thing is just finding the space and just whatever is.
That's the cornerstone of everything, Angie. That's the cornerstone of everything. Whatever is is. Whatever is exactly as is. There are countless reasons, Angie. Countless from previous lifetimes or this lifetime, or who knows when, who knows how, and who cares?
Right.
What can you do about it? Nothing.
Mm,
But you accept it. It is how it is. It's happened, it's here, and okay. No blame, no regrets, no, failed expectations, no whatever.
right.
Is it hard to accept that? Like life is continuation, is continuous life cycles, or to a certain point, where each life cycle, influences the next ones. And is it hard to accept?
You're asking me? No. That's what we were
Yes,
raised. That's how I was raised. So
I know,
it's
but is it? Oh, okay.
I mean, it
But
feels
you
very
did not
natural when
apply
people
it.
talk about that.
But you did not apply it to your life.
What I spent there was some period of time I was seeking out psychics. I wanted to know all about this. I wanted to understand and fit it together. And for me, in part, Baba discouraged all of that. He said it's not practical. Just you're here now. You know.
Yeah. But what I mean is, you still developed, as you said before, like a certain victimhood and righthood and all that in your particular
That's
life.
right.
Although you accepted the continuation of life cycles and the influences from life cycles to next, and and so on and so on, you still developed victimhood and righthood.
Yes, I could see the big picture of that, sort of the reincarnation cycle. That is the cycle that I accepted from an early age. But the day-to-day issues, I couldn't draw those connecting dots to. So, or the week by week unfolding of
There
life.
was a mental, yeah, it was only an acceptance as an idea. So I accept this
Yeah,
idea about, but when it comes down to the practical living, there is no acceptance of that.
there isn't, and I'm even now just sitting here trying to figure out how that affects the practical daily life. I see if there's in a life event, someone dying, there's obviously relationships that have happened in the past with a particular person and, it moves forward. But I'm saying, like, are all of the the people we work with on jobs, like for instance, we go to work every day, are those all people we've had past lives with? I mean, it becomes um, for me, it becomes
No,
sort
no,
of up
no,
here again.
no, no. Don't worry about that. When you go with, like, when you are now in that place where you are, your workplace, and you see
Mm,
all these stories, you see all these attachments, you see them. You see all these
mm,
people caught up in the victimhoods and righthoods. You can see that. You can see that. And you can hold your space as much as you can and open up that space. But you are in it all, and you can see it all happening. And you're not sucked into it. You're just well aware of everything. And leave it there.
mm,
You do what you can. You establish yourself in a space. You open the space a little bit as much as you can at your stage, so that people can benefit. Because as you've seen already, the people are attracted to it.
yeah.
It's just so peaceful. It's so much ease. It's so much acceptance. They need acceptance. You see, they cannot accept, which is a big problem. And they cannot move
Mm,
on or anywhere in life. They are stuck. But you see all that, Angie. You see that is that. You see all that. You see all that in other people's lives. You see all that in your life too. So you're not a victim anymore. You're not a person who is always right anymore. You are just this existence, the way it goes. And whichever way it goes, Angie, if it's with the stream, you experience a certain ease, and you're going in the right direction, a certain peace. If it's in complete discord, then you obviously have to change something, tinker with something a little bit on a physical level to get more into the ease and the peace and the but at the moment you are able to see all this and recognize it all as part of existence.
mm,
And you see, I was talking about this once. I've talked a lot, over the last few years, but we can see all these stories. Like, I sit with this lady and other ladies, I don't want to single her out, and I sit with her stories, with these stories. I sit with the attachments. I see all that, Angie. I'm not influenced by it, but I see it all. I see these victimhoods and righthoods and being caught up, attaching to the stories of other people. I sit with them. I see them all, but I'm not affected by them. I do not sympathize or not sympathize. I'm there and I'm with it. I'm part of it.
mm.
I see it all. I accept it all. It's all fine. but I do not cry because of their pain or whatever. You see what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, I don't feel affected by the people at work that way. I mean, just I'm able
It's
to talk to them, and well, they're mostly talking to me about it because they wanna explain the whole story, so but it doesn't
that's
affect
lovely.
me
That's
deeply
lovely.
like something closer would affect me.
Mm, that's lovely. Your space is actually quite established, you know. You obviously need continuation and you're working on continuation, but you know.
Mm,
So let me ask you now, you just, again, I'm just being like, oh, sorry. Angie, I will have to finish this for today because I'm running low.
your video
My
froze, but we
internet
can
is
hear
sort of,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I will have to finish this for today. And we might
Alright,
continue with some sort of a, maybe related topic in next week, or anyway, we'll see how we go. I still wanted to ask you a few things, so we might go on with that in the next weekly session.
okay,
But here, my
alright.
internet is struggling here, so
Yeah,
we'll
alright.
finish today. Thank
Thank
you
you so
all,
much.
and see you next week. Take care.
Mm,
Bye bye.
bye-bye.